Well, everyone, it's time for us to go and take a look at the PSP 3000 and see if this particular console is still worth buying in 2024. Now, the thing I would definitely tell you about the PSPs in general, as most of you know, there's so much love and quality behind this particular console. Sony did such a great job with the PSPs in general, and I do think the PSP 3000 in a lot of different ways is still very much worth it. But I will tell you, if you're just trying to go ahead and play the games with these particular consoles, there's so many other ways to go about it. You can just buy the games and just, play them through an emulator by just ripping the ISO file from the game itself. I would probably just recommend doing that. But if you really care about having the physical disc tray or like having the physical game, there's not really a better way to play these games rather than the original hardware that they were made for. And the PSP 3000 was one of the last great PSPs that Sony made. They had the PSP Go, they had the PSP Street, but the PSP 3000 was probably one of the last ones they made that was actually an amazing console in every single way. This is probably the best PSP ever made for the most part. Now, the thing I will tell you is, again, for a collector's item, all that stuff, then it's worth it. But for the most part, there's probably better ways and cheaper ways of going through and play these games, like through an emulator. If you buy the games, legally, I would recommend doing that. On the outside of the PSP 3000, it looks pretty much exactly the same as the other PSPs that came out before it, at least on the front side. So you were getting a pretty good looking faceplate. It looks pretty good. Again, there wasn't really that much to complain about here on the exterior of this particular console. It had a pretty good sized display, it was 4.3 inches. And I remember back in the day, maybe around 2012 or 2013, I had phones that had like 4.7 inch displays. And I actually tried to make myself feel better when I was playing games on that by thinking to myself, you know what, this display is bigger than a PSP 3000. So at least, I can make myself feel better by having a phone that was 4.7 inches rather than like a 5-inch display. I don't know why I thought about that, it was so dumb. But this particular panel in and of itself was actually one of the bigger differences from this in the PSP 2000. The PSP 3000 gave you an improved, better panel, so it was an improved LCD screen. The color range was increased, and it had 5 times the contrast ratio. The difference between a PSP 2000 and 3000 was pretty big, at least from the display. But also the difference between a PSP 1000 and PSP 3000, that was a massive difference. For a lot of people, they may have not switched over to a 2000 from a 1000, but a lot of people switched over from a PSP 1000 to a 3000, at least as far as I can tell. Now, the PSP 3000 was also very thin. It was still a very, very thin console for the most part. And this was something that was actually very cool because for a lot of people, they still wanted a thinner console, and you were essentially getting that on the PSP, 3000 as well. They also changed up the disc tray a little bit as well. So now it was a little bit better and easier to, kind of open. It was a little bit of a newer design. And they actually gave a couple of new styling of buttons for the most part as well. So the design of the buttons was a little bit changed. So that was another physical thing that they added as well. That was a really, really nice touch. You were still getting the same type of charging ports and capability as the PSP 2000, which is very cool. The back plates still look pretty much the same as the PSP 2000 as well, but I definitely did like the design of this particular console for the most part. Like I said, it was almost the same thing as the PSP 2000, but it was still very nice to have this type of capability on this console because they were very beautiful devices for the most part. And I do think if I'm looking forward to these particular devices and gaming consoles, they still look very, very nice for the most part, which I'm very, very happy to see. But that kind of covers it up on the outside and the majority of the changes that Sony brought on the PSP 3000 in particular. But I will tell you one other thing. The capability behind the PSP 3000, there's still a lot of stuff here. I know a lot of people, owned PSPs and they custom ROM'd it, they, kind of jailbroke it in a way, and it was amazing. Having that type of capability of going through and essentially, having that type of capability was super cool because that's some really, really awesome stuff here. And personally for me, if I'm going through and getting some sort of device like this, I definitely do like having that type of capability where like the console itself is going to be giving you that type of stuff. I am a massive fan of the PSPs in general. And like I said, having this type of stuff on this particular console was super cool and having the type of capability was awesome. But the craziest thing was the game selection behind this console. Having that type of, capability of having those games available right there, like console, like quality games on this thing was amazing. Not just gaming console quality, like you could watch movies on this thing, you could do so much stuff via the UMD slot of this particular console. And like I said before, I think this in and of itself was another very cool thing going on for this console, and it made me so happy whenever I was going through and, playing any games or using this particular device. It made me happy knowing that I can go through and use it from that particular side because it's so cool for the most part. So when I look at the PSP 3000 in 2024, I do think for a lot of people, this console is still worth it like I mentioned before. I think it was a very cool console for the most part, and I do think Sony did a really good job with it. I would just probably say that if you're in the market, you might be better off just going and playing these games differently. But if you like the hardware, it doesn't really get that much better than this. It's a really good console without a doubt. So that pretty much covers it up there. If you have any other thoughts or questions, please let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that'll mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.